The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
Do you think that Tom Hanks remembers all the movies that he's in?
Do you think he even remembers all the military movies he's in?
Right.
No.
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 I was watching Greyhound, and as I was watching it, I was like, how many? There's a lot of movies. And he's getting old. Like, do you think people are like, hey, man, I loved you in this movie? And he's like, which one?
I did that?
Right.
I just want to say that, like, I've really been putting myself into this battle and this war, and I now understand the pains of bullet wounds, burn victims, stabbings, childbirth, because I burned the tip of my finger by touching a pan that was a little too hot while making dinner. And so I feel like I can really speak to the tragedies that we're about to witness again.
You've been through it.
I've been through it. My son came over and was like, "This is your fault." And I was like, "No, it's not my fault." And he's like, "It's okay though."
No, he didn't say this is your fault. He said, this is your Leyte golf.
I said, "No, it's no one's fault, Dad. It's your fault." Jerk.
Interesting. He's not wrong.
No, that made it way worse.
Oh, goodness. Welcome to Battle Buddies, where we discuss conflict and violence in the world and from the past, perhaps the future.
I'll say the future conflict.
That'd be fun. Today we're on part 2 of the Leyte Gulf, the climactic Pacific War battle, which isn't really a battle. It's more of a little micro war in of itself.
It's weird.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Today, because I watched A Few Good Men again last night, as is tradition, and I think we're going to put Halsey on the stand today. We're going to really try to see if he ordered that Code Red.
I'm happy that we're doing this because I actually have some direct quotes from Halsey that we can play.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I have some letters.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
We're going to get there, though, but we're going to go over...
Can we do a previously on Battle Buddies?
I was trying to think about that, and I was so confused just trying to remember October 23rd.
Darter, Halls, and Dace Oates, right? Is that their names? Darter and Dace. I swear, dude, if I become a awesome pop punk band, Darter and Dace should be the
Darter
name.
and Dace? Yeah, it's cool.
Darter and Dace. And the first album name, my first EP, is going to be It's Okay.
Or You Sank My Battleship.
You sank my battleship. Yes. So, can we give it in a sentence what happened the day prior, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I liked your thesis stuff. So this 3-day battle or whatever is over America trying to restrict Japanese access to oil.
Mm-hmm.
So they can also use mid-range bombers to start bombing the mainland. They think it could cut I was listening to one YouTube video today, and he was talking about, like, some American analysts were thinking it was going to cut the war down from years to months, like this one thing. So, like, there was a lot of push for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I still like that as a thesis.
Okay.
Restricting the oil.
Yeah, I just restricting supplies and oil, and it was all coming down to the Philippines. And we liked the way that liberating the Philippines looked.
Yeah, it did look good.
It's a climactic, fun way for the U.S. to be like, we did it right.
Yeah, we said we'd be back.
We have returned.
We have returned. Yeah, and so last time we were talking about the different forces. So Japanese forces are largely controlled by Korea at this time. There's like 3 forces, and the Americans are set up as well. And there's huge chain of command issues that are going to get really talked about today. And then we had some submarines disobeying orders, kind of. We don't know. And then blowing up some ships and then running into the ground.
Not great. Oh, running aground.
Aground.
Yes.
Or beaching.
Running into the ground.
Both.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into Halsey, though, we should talk about the two main actions on October 24th. And again, last time we had talked about how we are going to simplify things because there are tons of boats that are going to get hit, like in damaged and lightly damaged and kind of damaged and like a lot of stuff. But it makes the whole thing very confusing. So we're going to focus on like the boat that sank and that people talk about.
Our goal is to make this entertaining.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, this is not the true full history. This is a snapshot of the history.
If you're a history major and you're listening to this for
Why?
your
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing it.
email us.
Yeah, exactly.
battlebuddiespod@gmail.com and we'll discuss all the things that you want to discuss.
Okay, so we're on October 24th. At 0700, Japan spotted the 38.3 task force with their aircraft. And this is one of the big task force that's controlled by Halsey at this time. They commenced 3 successive air attacks. I kept reading it originally in the book as successful attacks. And then when you read about what happens later, you're like, I don't understand how that was considered successful.
Why are you guys doing it again?
Successive, not successful, as we'll learn. Okay, and just to push home that this attack against Task Force 38.3 consisted of less than 100 fighters per attack, sometimes consisting of like 40 or less, which when you look at the American plane numbers per attack is crazy small. They had no chance. I don't know what they were thinking with that. And these attacks were supposed to include kamikaze attacks. And what I really appreciated is this guy, Fukudome. Thank you, Fukudome, because you were the one that resisted this order.
Fukudomi?
Oh, is it Fukudomi?
I think so.
Dang, it's because I learned like a tiny bit of French, right? And so like you don't say the last syllable.
Fukudome sounds kind of like a place where you play baseball. Are you guys going to the Fukudome?
Damn. And I'm like really trying to honor this guy. Like I think he's a true hero, like
He
on
said,
both
thank
sides.
you, Fukudome. And he's like, well, technically, no, because that's
not even close to
Watch
my
me
name.
be incorrect.
Right? That'd be the best. Yeah, he's the one that resisted the kamikaze order, and then they didn't do it.
Interesting.
Yes, because they wanted kamikaze attacks on the 24th. They thought that it was time, and he's like, maybe not yet.
Okay.
And I really appreciate the guy for that.
That kind of just reinforces the idea that this was a Hail Mary.
Yes,
That It's
absolutely.
like, we have no other options left.
Yes.
I think Dan Carlin goes into it, but I was reading it in The Twilight of the Gods by Ian W. Toll about just how poor Japan was becoming from all the money
man.
they were spending on the war, including just straight up starving to death.
Yeah.
And we're talking about them cutting off the last bit of oil that they have. Like, I think that's kind of one of the reasons that something like a kamikaze can be, in their minds, a successful idea, because they're like, well, what are we going to return to?
Right.
Like,
Right.
our country doesn't have food.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in some of the other battles, I think some of the planes stayed on the scouting mission because they didn't even have enough fuel to get back.
oh,
And like, there's like stuff like that going on too. Like, Jesus.
there's similar stories for the United States with fuel, but we go about it a little bit differently.
Right.
And I'll get into it here later,
Okay.
but yeah.
Well, and Dan Carlin keeps saying, and that's, again, Dan Carlin Supernova parts 1 through 6. It's super long. And if he's not your cup of tea, I'm sorry, but it's awesome. And he really does a good job of showing that Japan's just like everywhere else. Just a little more so right now.
Good way to put it.
They're just more than everybody else, but they're the same. Okay, so during all these attacks, there is this one American guy that we want to talk about a little bit, which is McCampbell. And
Let's
he's
go.
the air group commander of the Essex, and is credited with shooting down 9 planes, while his wingman shot down an additional 6, which is crazy, I imagine. We're looking at a picture of him right now. What a stud.
You see all those flags on his airplane?
Are those people he's befriended? Those are pen pals.
So I'm going to post this on our social media for everyone to see, but we're looking at a picture of McCampbell, whom we're going to be kind of speaking about here for the next couple minutes, but he's got 30 Japanese flags on the side of his
Jeez.
plane there, which I believe are confirmed kills.
Yes, those are only confirmed.
Yeah. This dude was a savage. Do you have a little bit of like his story, or do you want me to go into
No,
that?
you can go into that. I was going into the tactics.
So let me see here. Where do I want to start? So he was like a Hellcat dive bomber,
Right.
Which these guys would dive down towards the Japanese ships, and at 2,000 feet, going at like damn near 45-degree angle, they drop the bomb, a 550-pound bomb on these guys, and then immediately pull up and stay at a tree line level to the ocean. And the idea here is that the American pilots realized that the lower they stayed to the water, they would be out of the cannon's fire.
Oh, geez.
Because the fire's angled at a way that they're trying to
Right.
go up. So they were like, well, let's just stay below the fire rate.
It sounds so easy. I'll just stay really because
Let's just do that.
The winds are whipping in this area
Right.
on October 24th.
And so
it's so easy to do.
I was watching today some clips on YouTube from like the Smithsonian channel about actual pilots talking about their experiences from the Battle of Leyte Gulf.
Yeah.
And a lot of these dive bombers remember all these different colors of smoke that they would have to dodge because the different Japanese planes had different colors of smoke so that they could figure out who was shooting where.
Whoa.
So they called them what's the proper term for not frack, not it's a term used for all of the Japanese. It's not even just Japanese, it's just missile fire.
Right.
Have you seen that word? You know what I'm talking about? I'm gonna see it come up, and then I'm gonna yell it really loudly for all the listeners to hear when I finally get it. But all the colors were different, so it was like a rainbow version of that, and they remember that specifically, just like yellow, red, oranges as they're just diving down, which I just imagine would be an insane dude tripping on ecstasy. Like, look at all these colors, so vivid. Not that I would have any idea what that is like, but I can read here the actual citation for the McCampbell's Medal of Honor. During a major fleet engagement with the enemy on October 24th, Commander McCampbell, assisted by but one plane, intercepted and daringly attacked a formation of 60 hostile land-based craft approaching our forces, shot down 9 Japanese planes, and completely disorganized the enemy group, forced the remainder to abandon the attack before a single aircraft could reach the fleet. So this dude is approaching 60 Japanese aircrafts. Mind you, none of the citation says this, but I watched an entire video where like his grandson is talking about his story.
Right.
By the time that the American forces saw all these guys on the radar coming towards them, like, oh shit, we gotta go. All of the planes were not fully fueled.
Right.
They didn't have all of their ordnance and like weapons on their aircraft ready. And McCampbell was like, all right, let's go. And just went with half of the fuel that he had and half of the ammo. And so by the time that he had been done shooting down 9, which, by the way, is the most American pilot confirmed kills in a single battle ever.
It's crazy.
Ever.
It wasn't easy. Like, we'll get into the tactics.
They call him the ace of aces.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, Maverick can go fuck himself.
This dude is Iceman all the way.
Right.
Like,
right. Real life shit.
I follow the rules.
Yeah.
I do my time. I do what I'm supposed to do.
And so when he came back, when he ran out of fuel, the aircraft carrier, which one was he on again? The
Essex.
The Essex. Still had all of the planes chilling on the landing, on the what would you call that?
The flight deck?
Yeah, the flight deck.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so they were like, okay, go to a different ship where their flight deck is clear. You can land on that one. And so he goes to a different aircraft carrier, and that one has all of their planes. So he's just like cruising along. He's like, I'm running on fumes here.
His nerves are probably shot. He's just like
Dude.
drinking Red Bull. Like,
So apparently this was his comfort zone. He
Okay.
went to the Naval Academy, and he was a a collegiate high diver.
oh man.
So heights and the water were his thing.
yeah.
He was comfortable with that the entire time.
Do you think Navy pilot recruiters go to high dives? And like, you seem to like to fall from heights into water. I have an exact job for you.
I have an idea of what you could do.
Yeah.
You could be useful to us. So by the time that the second aircraft carrier finally got rid of all of their planes for him to land, the moment this dude lands, he runs out of fuel.
Dang.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, dude. Like, where is the movie?
Yeah, where is his movie?
I just want to know where the movie is.
Where is his career after? Like, he's not just some Joe Schmo pilot. Like, he's the air group commander. Like, he's a big deal. He didn't need to be doing that. And we're going to, like, talk about for half of the show, is Halsey to blame, or is it all the other commanders who were also? And this guy's like, fuck that, I just do what I'm supposed to do. Like, because it's not like he went out and chased down the last remaining aircraft. Like, he just did his job.
Did the right thing.
And then came back.
Right.
And so it's like, he clearly wasn't just in it to, like, get a medal, and he wasn't just in it to get accolade.
There's stories of he was on a ship that sank during the Guadalcanal, and he was the last guy off because he knew that he could jump off wherever he was staying and swim well because of all of his colleagues. I don't know, man. It was definitely one of those things where all of his past and accumulation of life experiences was just perfect for this particular situation.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, super cool story, but shout out to McCampbell, who got the Medal of Honor for being just a straight Tony Stark. Like,
dude, it's cool.
Yeah, it's hella cool.
And, okay, we talked about it last episode, and it's worth discussing a little bit here. But we talked about how Japanese airplanes, or the pilots at least, are not as well trained right now because most of their aces have been shot down, and America has started rotating their aces, so our aces are training people, and we're getting better. But I still think Japan put up a pretty good fight with their aircraft because their tactic, I was looking at some diagrams of it, and I was trying to figure out how to explain it to everybody. And then I was trying to think about, like, me as a novice, which would be me in the air right then, trying to do it. And I'm like, that's the tactic they went with for not, like, they still very competent people.
What was the tactic?
Yeah, okay. So the Japanese planes utilized a strategy that was called the Lufberry Circle.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and this is when the planes, they're usually bombers, they fly in a horizontal circle to protect one another. So what happened is, again, Japan has no airplanes left. And so they have to find a way to protect their bombers. So they use other bombers to protect their bombers. So they make like a literal donut.
Yeah, a circle.
But like, these are novices. Like, they're flying in a tight circle.
Formation, yeah.
And they're flying above people shooting at them. And, well, okay, so now we'll go into like, how was it broken? What goes on? So this is one, all right. According to a picture I found on the Illustrated Dictionary of Aviation, the weakness to this strategy is fighter pilots abusing attacks vertically. Visually, think of the Japanese pilots flying in a big donut. Anything that crosses their x-axis is going to get hit. So American pilots, again, this sounds like McCampbell's dream scenario, are going to start much higher on the y-axis. Then they're going to dive through the donut, and this minimizes the time that they are in the x-axis to be exposed to the attack. And this sounds like exactly what that guy liked to do already. And so, like, it wasn't a bad strategy. In terms of, like, you have 6 planes left and you need to go do this, like, fly in a tight circle so you can protect each other. It just happened that McCampbell was specifically bred, like, through his whole life to come down. And it's like a Christopher Nolan movie, like, you know, like the music's all playing, like he's flashing back, like, Murph, like,
yeah, dude.
This is why Murph told me to dive.
Oh my God, Christopher Nolan. I was also listening to McCampbell talk about where they aimed on the plane that they would shoot at, which helped.
Okay.
So typically in the beginning of the war, and a lot of pilots would naturally, and even when I play video games, right, I'm like, let me aim at the pilot.
Right.
Right. So, and what McCampbell noticed when doing that was if you aim at the pilot, you're most likely going to get a combustion from the engine and you're going to get like a huge explosion. Well, that explosion is now causing debris that could potentially get into your propeller,
Right.
could potentially slam into your plane, your face. It can kill you essentially.
Right.
So he aimed at the wings.
That's such an Iceman thing to say and to do. Maverick would never think of that.
Yeah, so he aimed at the wings and would let them kind of tumble their way down to the ocean and let the ocean take care of the rest of the work. But that's so brilliant and interesting. It's such a simple thing that I have not even thought of.
Right.
Like, oh, well, just obviously you would aim at, you want boom, boom, go boom.
Right.
Call of Duty, boom, boom, pow, pow. But no.
I would spend the whole time trying to not get hit. I would never even think of like, oh, I can shoot at them too. Like I would just be freaking out.
Right.
And this guy's like, not only am I going to shoot, I'm going to shoot better.
With half the ammo and gas and fuel and wins of Medal of Honor and just crazy.
So at the end of the fight, the Essex had taken down 24 aircraft, the Lexington had taken down 13, and the Japanese had only taken down 1 American aircraft. No ships were damaged. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy, but
yeah.
It's not going to stay great. This next like whole segment is weird. It's weird. And I don't know if in the Tin Soldiers like this is talked about more, because some of these parts, he's just like, my author is just like, there was heroism. Like, what?
It really narrows it down.
Can you elaborate on this? Because this sounds bonkers and like I don't understand everything that's happening, but I'll give you what I got. So little did the Princeton know, though, that one Japanese Judy bomber, and I think the Judy bomber is like the Hellcat in that they dive, was hiding in the clouds for the entire fight.
Yeah.
Which is, in terms of strategy, like, kudos to that guy in terms of, like, understanding what was going on. Like, he's like, I'm not going to survive and do our job and make all these sacrifices worth it unless I just have the nerve to stand up here in the clouds and let all my buddies get shot down. Like,
right.
That's crazy to me. There's no way I could do that either. I couldn't watch my friend die and like,
no,
I'm just gonna wait till it's my
camping.
turn. Yeah. He was carrying a 550-pound semi-armor piercing bomb.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. At 0938, while the Princeton was getting back its aircraft, the bomber came down and dropped his payload on the flight deck. The bomb exploded the bakery and 6 Avengers that were armed and refueled. Between 10:10 and 10:20, all non-firefighter crew were ordered to abandon the ship. Some other ships came to help fight the fires, but the combination of wind, lack of control from the Princeton, and delays stopping a Japanese attack resulted in a complete tragedy. Volunteers from the light cruiser Birmingham were fighting fires on the Princeton. At 15:23 at the time, the Birmingham was tying up on the port side aft. The fire reached a stowage compartment aft on the hangar on the starboard side of the ship where torpedo flasks and spare bombs had been stowed.
Yeah, so like who cares, right?
Right.
A 550-pound bomb plunges through the middle of the deck. It says the bomb left only a small hole as it continued deeper inside the carrier.
It got the fucking baker. I keep saying 2 jobs. Well, I keep saying the job that I would do in the military is delivering mail. And the thing that I'm always trying to think about now is everybody needs bread. So I'm always trying to think, this guy is just out there making bread. And he's the one that blows up first. Fucking sucks.
From some of the narratives that I've been reading, it doesn't seem like they really gave a shit.
No, the orders from the bridge were just like, it's fine.
Dude, they said that there could be a speedy repair. Aboard the Essex, Admiral Sherman also dismissed the bomb hit. Quote, as I felt the Princeton was much too tough a ship for one hit by a 500-pound bomb to cause any serious damage, What?
What?
A 500-pound bomb? Yeah, we're good.
And
Ships are way heavier than that.
right. Well, and Spencer talking about how the planes weren't fueled and didn't have their weapons on was an issue. That's by design. They're not supposed to all the time, and we're gonna learn why. Like, it's not good.
Boom, boom.
Not good.
Boom, boom, pow, pow.
You shouldn't put all of your explosive things together. So half the men on the upper deck of the Birmingham were killed. Suffice it to note that the scene must have been appalling, and the stoicism of wounded and dying is very moving. 229 officers, I've read somewhere else where it was like 230 something, so that number may vary. 229 officers and men were killed, and 420 were wounded. That's where I didn't know if you had anything on the stoicism and heroism, because all he says is it was very moving. I don't know if that came up in Tin Soldiers.
About the bomb?
About the people on the Birmingham getting killed from the explosion. So what happens, right, is that the Birmingham is coming up on the port side of the Princeton, and then the Princeton explodes, and it explodes and crashes like the top half of the Birmingham and kills all those guys on the top deck.
Yeah, so I have a quote here from somebody who on the Birmingham who witnessed the entire thing. The quote says, "The explosion was as surprising as it was terrifying. I think it can well be compared to a small volcano. A considerable portion of the after part of the Princeton was blown into the air and fell in the water astern. Flying fragments, some huge, some small, burst outwards and upwards, showering the deck of the Birmingham from stern to stern."
Yeah.
That sounds horrible.
Sounds horrible. Well, because,
volcano?
Yeah, let's go. So, that's the final explosion part. So, the story takes a weird turn from here. The cruiser, the Irwin, at 1645, was ordered to blow up the Princeton, but its third and sixth torpedo missed, came back to the Irwin, and missed in less than 10 yards. Another ship came, fired, and hit the Princeton. Its 100,000 gallons of gas made the ship literally get blown to pieces, sink in less than a minute, and have an actual mushroom cloud left. Like that, what the heck? What the heck with this Princeton thing? Like, the whole thing just seems like so out of nowhere. Like, the one pilot hiding in the clouds dropped one bomb. Everyone's like, it's fine. And then
Not fine.
It's not fine. And then another ship comes up next to it. And then they're like, it'll be fine now. And then that ship gets blown up. Like 200 guys die on that ship.
Yeah, it's not great.
Oh my God! Like, doesn't seem great for Boots.
I'm wondering if just there was some level of complacency there.
Yeah.
Where they were just like, we just fucking murdered so many people.
Right.
And then something happens. They're like, let's not let this ruin our day.
Right. Or it's like you're calming down, and your wife's trying to tell you like, hey, you got to turn it on. The kid's freaking out. Like, it's fine. I don't want to have to turn it up to 10 right now. And then the kid's like lit your house on fire.
Yeah. So with your book talking about there was heroism or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm on this website called warfarehistorynetwork.com, which is really awesome. But it says here, despite the horror, men shook off their stupor and started helping the wounded. Their valor was matched by the calmness exhibited by those felled by the blast. Quote, "I really have no words at my command that can adequately describe the veritable splendor of the conduct of all hands, wounded and unwounded. Men with legs off, arms off, with gaping wounds in their sides, with tops of their heads furrowed by fragments, would insist, 'I'm all right, I'm all right. Take care of Joe over there.' Or 'Don't waste morphine on me, Commander, just hit me over the head.' Terrible as this destruction was, it is a source of supreme gratification to know the heights of courage and forgetfulness of self to which one's shipmate can rise."
Wow.
It's professionalism, dude.
That is the stoicism.
Yeah, I think these men, and I can understand a very small portion of this,
right,
that when you're in a situation like that, you really do have to revert to your training and not seek your emotions in that. Those for when you get home,
right? And
you're staring at a bunch of kids playing in the street, and you're like, "What is happiness?"
Right.
You know what I mean? But in the moment, you've been trained for years and years for moments like that, where I mean, just for these men to be like, this is what I was waiting for.
Right.
I was mentally prepared for this. And this is, quote, the greatest generation, right?
Right.
Is what they call these men. These men came home and didn't talk about this shit.
No. But that is an interesting point. The Birmingham clearly drilled, right? Like, they clearly did drills.
All the time, dude.
And I don't know, when some of the other stuff that we'll be reading about and that we've been discussing, like, it's not always clear. Like, do you guys drill? Like, do you guys really know what to do? And this one's like, yeah, like, they knew it. They knew it backwards and forwards. So
Dude,
they probably loved their commander.
I was watching Greyhound with Tom Hanks. For those of any of you who have Apple TV out there, it is a really intense and really well done movie. And I was texting my brother while I was watching it, who was in the Navy, and it seems like in this movie, every 2 seconds they're doing a general quarters, all hands on deck. And this is before, so we kind of always hear, every Marine or rifleman, where
Right.
you just kind of assume that every Marine is Arnold Schwarzenegger and a badass,
Right.
or whatever. But really, these sailors have kind of got a similar thing going on, man.
Absolutely.
In the movie Greyhound, spoiler alert, there's a cook who gets messed up doing a general quarters, reloading a weapon, helping someone reload a weapon. So all these men who could be doing a printing press,
Right.
or the cook, or whatever it is you're doing on the ship, you can turn into a warrior
Yeah.
really quick. And you do these drills daily?
Yeah.
I'm not in the Navy, so I don't know, but I imagine to the point where you could do it in your sleep.
Right.
You do it in your sleep.
Yeah. You hot
So-
bunking. And so, yeah, the Princeton. Not great for America, losing that ship. Again, this is one of those weird things where we'll talk about it a little bit later, too. America's not going to lose this battle. Like, they can't. They have way too many boats. But, and maybe just because I've never served, like, whenever I think about, like, any boat dying, like, at all, any boat and losing lives, like, still tragic. And so it's like, I don't think Japan was like, we got that one boat. It's over now. Like, they're just trying to inflict battle and just trying to make it cost so much. And, man, heavy stuff.
Yeah, no, I feel like one ship is a nightmare.
Yeah.
To lose.
It's just they
one.
have so many ships in these formations. Like,
Right.
trying to even read about how they change their formations from, like, the
God.
cruising formations to battle lines, like, boring.
The
They're boring. Because it's all about changing their changing their speeds
the
and, like, oh
flagship
my
and all
God,
that,
so much
and-
flag play.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a lot.
Okay, so that's the American one that gets sunk on the 24th. Let's go over a Japanese one.
Oh, I know where we're going with this.
Yeah. So let's discuss the sinking of the Musashi, that we're going to call it? Musashi.
I like that.
Okay. This Japanese vessel was hit by 20 to 26 torpedoes and 17 to 30 bombs. This is the initial barrage that it was exposed to.
The initial.
This is the initial. That is not the total amount. This is, the guy was explaining it to me in the book that eventually they stopped counting, kind of like, we'll go over more
All
of
right.
it.
So what's our bomb number at right now? You said
30 bombs.
30. Yikes. Okay.
So this was the result of around 3 attacks from American aircraft. By the 4th attack at 12:53, the Musashi was in dire enough straits to fire its Sanshiki Dan 3,000-piece airburst rounds from an 18.1-inch guns. That seemed irrelevant to me, but I'll explain why that is like a big red flag. Like when Americans saw this happen and when Japan saw this happen, everybody on the other ships was like, "Oh fuck!"
Really?
Like, yeah, it was a big deal because these rounds just destroy the guns. Like they destroy the accuracy forever in the guns, or at least until they're totally repaired. So you don't fire them unless your ship is gonna go down.
Like that.
It's the end.
Damn. Okay.
So by firing them, the ship was declaring that it wasn't long for this world. The Musashi began to get hit again, so much so that there's an account of one torpedo going through a hole that was just made by another torpedo.
Wow.
So like it was getting pretty intense, and it was absolute carnage. Kurita, who remember he's like one of the main guys from the Japanese fleets, he ordered the ship to run aground and become a battery. It's actually a pretty smart
That
plan.
is smart.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed with that one. Its emergency lights went out, and it called for aid. The Hamikaze and the Kiyoshimo refused out of fear. So this is going to be Kevin talking, not the books that I was reading. Personally, I feel that this is an underrepresented point in Japanese morale. Throughout almost the entire war, Japanese soldiers operated seemingly without fear. Soldiers fought to the man rather than being captured more often than can be believed. Not only that, but we have tried to show just how little forces Japan has left at this point in the war. It must have been truly hell on earth for them to refuse.
Yeah.
Because the boat had no lights on it either. Like, it's just literally in the dark.
Bro.
Like,
that's
ugh.
ghost ship. That's that's terrifying.
And none of this is even the crazy part yet. It still took another 3 hours for the Musashi to sink. At 1920, the order was given to abandon the ship. At 1935, it capsized to port while men ran along her hull. Crewmen, this is a quote from a primary source. So crewmen started jumping off the stern, which was sticking up like a tower from the ocean surface. Before they reached the ocean surface below, they were screaming in horror. Most of them hit the battleship's huge screws before they reached the water. Crewmen were running alongside the battleship, and several men who jumped off the sides were sucked into huge holes made by the torpedoes.
Oh my.
It then created a whirlpool sucking down sailors. Finally, it exploded, creating a pillar of soldier and ship fragments out of the sea. The soldiers who survived were in water that had 1.5 feet of oil on top of it, and then it took 3 hours before they could be rescued. When they did arrive, some men were reportedly killed by the propellers of the boats that came to rescue them.
What?
And in the end, a total of 1,376 officers and men from the original crew of 2,399 were rescued from the sea's embrace. Depending on perspective, this was a surprisingly high number given the circumstances of the Musashi's loss,
I would say so.
or a relatively small number given the time she took to sink. What?
It's more than I would have guessed, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took 3 hours. Like, they had... but they were getting attacked by America. Like, they were running away. Kurita's running away at this time.
Yeah, I got a quote here. Kurita tossed caution to the wind at around 5:14 p.m. and sent a message to General Toyota saying, "Braving any loss and damage we may suffer, the first striking force will break into Leyte Gulf and fight to the last man."
Jesus.
So yeah, they were. There was no idea in their mind of like, just go home. Let's just get this. Yeah, I think it was a quicksand type scenario, just slowly going under earth into your demise.
I can't believe that. Like, you read about it, but then reading how many people were literally getting sucked into those holes in the ships.
Dude, that's a crazy. Are those quotes from the book that you were reading?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's the visual of that.
Yes,
just, and then the foot of oil.
Yeah,
on the top of the. Can you imagine just gasping for air but getting a mouthful of oil in your mouth and nose? Ooh.
Ugh. So, not great. The American pressure continued to ramp up through daylight on October 24th. Kurita turned west and fled. This means that they had to cross the Desolation in the Musashi later on, which is like a whole thing. And I couldn't find any direct quotes on it, but you have to imagine that, like, you know, your fleet left them because they started like, they went leeward. I forget. There's like a whole thing, right? They start like listing. Is that what it's called? When ships start to list, I think it means like they lose power and they start like drifting away from the formation.
Listing towards port. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it was listing, and so the rest of the fleet was like, nope, and they kept going. And then all the things happened to it. But then when they started running away, they had to pass it. And I could just imagine, like, there's, almost 2,500 people on there. You probably know some of them.
Yeah.
They're probably your buddies. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way all your buddies are on the same boat. There's just no way.
Mm-mm.
And Korea had already lost one boat at this time, So like, I was just imagining like they probably had to share the people around and stuff. All right. Do you have anything on the Musashi? We're just like super sad reading it. I was trying to like find some jokes. Like, there's no jokes, man. This is rough.
No jokes today, folks. I'm trying to look here for some quotes for you. A lot of this stuff kind of has to do with Halsey, which I believe is what you're going to be kind of morphing into.
Yeah, which we should probably start. So, okay. If you remember from last time, Ozawa was the northern guy. And Ozawa is the Japanese fleet commander, and his fleet is meant to act as a decoy from the north. So from the north of Leyte Gulf, he's supposed to draw as much boats to him as possible. At 11:15, Ozawa committed 62 aircraft separated into two groups for an offensive mission against American carrier fleets. It is worth repeating, Japan has almost no aircraft, so this means that Ozawa probably had almost zero aircraft to protect his fleets and carriers. The attack wasn't successful in terms of combat, but it was 100% successful in alerting the Americans to that fleet. You see, aircraft that land on carriers use things called tail hooks so that they can grab onto the wires when they land onto the flight decks. And American aircraft reported the hooks and the people that they were fighting. So, and this is a quote, "From this time, the attention of Halsey and Task Force 38 was to be divided between the area northeast and Ozawa's carrier force and the Sibuyan Sea and Korea's battle force." So, yes, the Japanese aircraft didn't really win the combat, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do, which is kind of just bait really well. And I think it's a really good bait to just have the tailhook there, because they're not signaling too hard that there's a force there that you should probably go check out.
Come and get it.
Yeah, but they had little tailhooks, and they all flew from the same direction, so the pilots are smart, and they're just radioing back everything they see. They're like, they got tailhooks. They clearly came from the northeast.
Mm-hmm.
And then Halsey's just like, yeah, well, we should probably go check that out.
Yeah. He had options.
he had options. So, but I think I'm going to try to not just slam Halsey. So let's remember the fog of war that we talked about yesterday. It's about distortion. America had some intel that Japan had created new carriers recently, but they didn't know to the extent of how weak Japan's military had become. That's important, right? I think that's a point that is easy to overlook after the fact. We know in excruciating detail that Japan was barely hanging on. What's like a football team that does really poor? Like the Detroit Lions, is that a thing? They were like a joke.
What are you asking me? What's a football team that does really poorly?
Yeah, like all the time. Like barely survives.
You haven't heard of the Raiders?
Hey. Whoa.
Shots fired.
Dang.
Shots fired.
Am I supposed to like I think I like the Raiders.
Right now, yeah, the Detroit Lions. Yeah, that's perfect. You know what? You kind of nailed that.
Look, sports references. Who over here are battle buddies.
You're great.
Woo!
Man, I'm gonna get lit up for that Raiders comment. All right.
You deserve it. Okay, so they knew that Japan was in dire straits. They just didn't know how bad. So they couldn't know that they were outperforming like production of airplanes to an alarming extent. Like America's producing them every 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and Japan's not producing them. Like they're having people build parts of it in their garages and stuff at this point. So not going great. At 15:12 on October 24th, Halsey drew task forces 38.2 and 38.4 into Task Force 34. Mm-hmm. Super confusing. Super confusing. They created what was essentially a battle line, and then Halsey is going to spot Ozawa at 18:15. So I'm going to say what I think is going on, and you can correct me. Or it gets super murky right here, right?
I feel like I have some light on this situation. I have legitimately Halsey's words on the matter.
Okay. So,
but please share.
So at this point, I'm seeing Halsey is supposed to kind of make a battle line around here for the strait, because he's right next to the strait, right? The San Bernardino Strait. Mm-hmm. And he's supposed to block that strait. So he is supposed to form Task Force 34. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because everything else after that's like, what the hell? Like, there should have been like big hearings, and Aaron Sorkin should have wrote a movie about like the courtroom scene drama.
He did. It just got scrapped.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna put Halsey on trial here now. So the trial of Halsey is complicated. I don't even know if there really was a trial for him or if there was a court-martial, but people criticize him at least. We're going to start with just a simple charge, and then we'll make it more confusing. I think it's just easier that way. The charge would be that Halsey made an enormous error when he decided to send 3 carrier groups north to chase Ozawa, leaving no one to cover the San Bernardino Strait. Those of you that aren't very comfortable with geography, the San Bernardino Strait is how you access the Leyte Gulf from that area.
It's pretty key little access point there.
They have like lights.
Oh,
like the navigation lights?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole weird thing.
It's a thing.
We'll get into that too.
Yes.
Okay. So do you have anything to say before we start going into...
Would you like... So I have here from John Prados's Storm over Leyte, his 3 options that he has.
Okay.
And then I have a quote from Halsey giving his reasoning as to why he chose the option that he chose.
Okay, so yeah, because Halsey says he has 3 choices at this moment that he can do. So people that are listening that are confused, Halsey, it's October 24th, has spotted Ozawa. He knows Ozawa's there, and he's also supposed to cover the San Bernardino Strait to make sure that no one destroys the people, the poor enlisted guys that we just threw onto this beach.
So let's say you're playing paintball and it's capture the flag. You and Halsey are chilling by your base, your flag, and you see a bunch of dudes walking on by to go towards like another flag, and you're like, but we were told to stay and guard this flag. And Halsey's like, I have other ideas.
But what if?
Okay, so let me read this real quick just to kind of set the stage here. As he saw it, Admiral Halsey had 3 options. He could stay and guard the San Bernardino with his entire force, but that seemed to concede freedom of action to Japanese air forces, both sea and land-based. It would also have breached his core instruction to seek battle with a major Japanese fleet. Alternatively, Halsey could detach the battleships of Task Force 34 to guard San Bernardino and head north with his carriers.
Yep.
The admiral viewed that as a half measure and a dilution of his force.
Yep.
And because the flak, that's the word I was looking for earlier, folks, flak, which is anti-aircraft, it's a missile fire, flak. It's a real thing. And because the flak defenses of his carrier groups would be greatly weakened, Japanese aircraft might achieve more than if the Third Fleet stayed together. The third option was to go after Ozawa with all 3 carrier groups in hand. Now,
which that's omitting go them all and leave the San Bernardino Strait to God in Japan. Like,
well said. Yes. So here's Halsey's reasoning for the third option, which is to go after Ozawa with all 3 carrier groups in hand, right? It preserved my fleet's integrity.
Is this his quote about being molested? Unmolested. I was kidding.
All right, folks, we got a joke in there. When you were waiting for jokes, we got them. All right, here's Halsey. It preserved my fleet's integrity. It left the initiative with me, and it promised the greatest possibility of surprise. Even if the Kurita fleet meanwhile penetrated San Bernardino and headed for Leyte Gulf, it could only hope to harry the landing operation. Elsewhere, the fleet commander argues, we had long since decided the carriers were potentially the most dangerous ships the Japs had. Don't love that word. We named them our primary targets. And as for the Japanese in the Sibuyan Sea, we knew Kurita's ships had suffered damage from our attacks, particularly to their upper works and probably to their fire control instruments. The admiral stormed into flag plot, stabbed at Ozawa's position, marked on a chart, and declared to the chief of staff, Robert Carney, here's where we're going, Mick. Start them north.
Oh, my God. I have another quote from him too about choosing that third.
Is it
the third
about
option.
him being?
It is. It's about not wanting to get molested. The Northern Force could not be left to operate unmolested. So it's about him wanting to be a molester. Destruction of its carriers would mean much to our future operations. Okay.
Since you told me molesting, I'm looking at my quote here and I'm like, penetrated San Bernardino. Oh man. Anyway, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's go through the defense's case. So was this an enormous error? Here's what I got for the defense. One of the major objectives in fleet action at this point of the war was the destruction of Japanese carriers. He's not lying when he says that. Like, after Pearl Harbor, we learned the hard lesson, because Japan beat everybody to it, that carriers are the future. Battleships are the past.
Mm-hmm.
In war, concentration of force is vital to successful battles. That's also that's a doctrine. It's a real doctrine. And
say it one more time.
So concentration of force is vital to successful battles. What do you think? You have a thought on that?
No,
Okay.
I think that's important.
Yeah, it is important.
Concentration of force, because that's kind of, I think that's what Halsey's going to really lean on.
Is what he's going to lean on, but the crux of the at the time, I think that's what he was definitely leaning on. But he's also leaning on technicality, which I don't love. But modern defenses, like when I was reading that guy's master thesis out of the Navy, the modern defense really seems to be that it's not really Halsey's fault because of the combination of poor communication and disunity of leadership. That's the real enemy.
That's lazy.
And like, I don't love the modern defense of Halsey in that regard. Like, that's like it's not the parents' fault and the kid's fault of a school shooting. It's like you just like pass the buck up. Like, it has to be someone's fault at some point so we can like intervene and not let it happen again, I guess, like in terms of retroactively looking at things. Okay. But Halsey himself defends his actions through a provision of his orders. So it does state in his formation was to, and these are his actual orders from Nimitz and all those guys, to destroy enemy and air forces in or threatening the Philippine area in the event that the opportunity for the destruction of a major portion of the enemy fleet offers itself or can be created. Such destruction becomes the primary task. In other words, if you have a chance to do it,
do it.
And so that opens up the Darter and Dace thing a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good defense right off the bat. Like, after I read it every time, I'm like, all right, maybe Halsey's not that bad. Do you have anything else for the defense of Halsey?
The defense of Halsey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were kind of prefacing before this episode a little bit with communication.
Yes.
And chain of command, particularly when we get into the weeds with things like Leyte Gulf, there's a lot of gray area.
There is. A lot more than you would think in a military battle.
And if shit rolls downhill, as they say,
right.
I kind of look at MacArthur and his communication with Nimitz and the president and leadership from the top.
Yeah, and who's that guy? Don't they have a joint chief of staffs who's like useless, King or something like that? I think his name's King.
Yeah, I know who you're talking.
But he doesn't he like just shows up as like a footnote a couple times.
And so this is kind of what I'm talking about is I think that a lot of key players like Nimitz, like the president, noticed that MacArthur was kind of just doing his own thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of people like Halsey and like, the Darter and Dace were like, you just have to do it. This is the war. This is the war that we're living in, where you don't necessarily have conversations and be diplomatic about things.
Whoa.
You just fucking do it.
Whoa, I didn't think of. So you're saying the persona of MacArthur has shaped the Western approach to the Pacific War, the Pacific Theater. It's possible.
That's my defense for Halsey. That's my defense.
Would Tom Cruise like that in A Few Good Men?
Wow, Commander, I'm really turned on right now.
Oh my God. That quote does not age well.
No, it didn't.
Okay. That's a much better defense than I've read so far.
You like that?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. What do your leaders do? You want to model yourself after them to some regard. Okay. I'm having confusing thoughts.
That was just off the dome.
Yeah, I like it. All right, but we don't need to give you an ego.
I'm having confusing thoughts. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, just because I had like an idea, and now my idea is being challenged, and
What's your idea, dude?
My idea is that Halsey's wrong. Like,
well, can't we get into that?
Yeah, we can get into that. But I like having my ideas challenged. Like that's
a rare perspective.
That
sir.
was a good take, and it was new. All right, let's go into the correct case, the prosecution's case. I'm just kidding, kind of. So the major defense is rejected.
Redact.
With one hesitates to write. This is from the book I was reading. One hesitates to write anything in defense of MacArthur. Fair point. But for naval historians to blame an army general for a lack of proper communications between naval formations seems to be at the very limit of credibility. Which, that's poking holes in the defense's case of it's the bad communication because MacArthur wasn't communicating all the time with everybody. And this guy's saying, you are the Navy and he is MacArthur, who's his own thing. You can't say it's his fault for poor communication when you can all still talk to each other.
Fair.
I feel like that is a fair criticism.
Yeah, it's very fair.
So going into the fog of war question, there is some grace for Halsey, which I think even as a prosecution, I would allow like some grace, like things are distorted in the fog of war.
Yeah.
And we can never reject that.
Turns out you had a lot on your plate.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I don't want your job at all. But the grace stops when Halsey's statements about Kincaid taking hit and run, those are quotes, hit and run attacks from Kurita. So I'll explain this in a second. In other words, Halsey is accepting an attack on Kincaid, who's in charge of landing those enlisted guys, right? As a possibility that is worth his prize. Wilmot attacks this when he describes, so Wilmot's the author of the book that I was reading. He quotes like an old saying, right? Which is, the difference between genius and stupidity is that genius has its limits. And I really feel that with why I don't like Halsey's decisions here. Because he's cool with the primary reason that they're even there is to get those guys on the beach. And he's totally cool with them taking hit and run attacks by a supposedly damaged Kurita. He doesn't know how damaged they are. Fog of war. And he's like, they'll be fine. They'll take some hits. Like, that's a big thing that you are deciding for somebody else. And like the little wannabe libertarian inside of me is like, no, you don't get to choose how other people have to respond to your choices. Like, that's not fair. I have more. Before Halsey gave his orders, he knew Kurita had turned back east and that Japan had turned on navigation lights in the strait. I don't know what these look like. I assume they're in video games, like when the arrows form for your car to go over and you get a speed boost. Like, I assume that the lights are all arrows, and then that's how they go. But that's a pretty big indicator that Kurita was going to go there, that was his choice. Lieutenant Matthews, who's on Halsey's boat 2 different times, supposedly, argues with Halsey about leaving the strait unprotected. And then Kincaid asked Halsey if Task Force 34 had formed that battle formation that we talked about. And Halsey didn't fucking reply until like late the next morning when Kincaid had already figured it out. I have one more point before I hear your rebuttal or your agreement. Backing up a little bit to the deployment, the prosecution's strongest piece of evidence was a reply to Halsey from Nimitz, because Halsey was asking to go chase some boats or something like that earlier when they were going over there. And Nimitz said, cover and support forces of the Southwest Pacific. and said, "You are not allowed to do anything without me explicitly telling you to do it."
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nimitz fucking said that to him.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there is that provision in Halsey's orders. But then you have like Nimitz, his boss, literally saying, also don't do it. And also just to remind you, your job is to protect the people that are unfortunate that have to land on this beach and hope that people are protecting them.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because while I was learning about McCampbell today and the Medal of Honor and all that stuff, he talks about in flight school, step 1 is protect the ship.
Right?
Like everything that you do needs to go back to protecting the ship.
Right.
And so,
but that one's mutually assured at least, right? Like if I was the carrier, like engineer, I'm cool with that because they got nowhere to land unless the boat's still here. So there's like a
true, but I think the idea here is that even if you're sitting there and it's like, oh, protect the ship at all costs, that means that that's at the front of your brain over like, oh, I just want to do some really cool shit.
Oh, right.
Because it seems like a big part of this, like you're straight up saying that Nimitz is saying, hey, don't do this unless I explicitly tell you that you can. But Halsey goes and does that shit anyway. That's like some damn near mutiny shit, no?
Right. And people are defending him. They're like, he was cool. Like, this master's thesis is from the Naval Academy.
Yeah. He's defending him?
Yeah, it's saying that the issue wasn't any of that. The issue was poor communication. They keep like circling. It's like a little circular argument, right? Like no one gets to new points. A lot of false dichotomies because like you'll read something and it'll be like Nimitz said this, like this is true, and then the rebuttal will be like, but communication was hard. And like, yes, but that's not the point that the last guy was bringing up. Like you guys are doing false dichotomies. Like that's not what he's talking about.
Not only that, if communication was hard, that doesn't mean that you just be like, well, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just go through with it.
And he clearly could communicate because Kincaid had sent that message to Halsey. That's confirmed. And Halsey didn't respond.
I do know that there is a huge form of loyalty from those who, serve under a particular admiral or a particular captain.
Yeah.
Might have something to do with it. Man.
And they may have felt like we were saying last episode with Darter and Dace, they may have felt like they were going to help everybody in the long run. Like if I could just do that.
This is definitely one of those things where, there's 7 Harry Potter books about this.
Right.
Like, oh, I did the wrong thing, but I'd end up being right in the end. And definitely Halsey has the 2020 perspective on his side of like, okay, I probably made the right decision here. Maybe.
I don't think he did.
No?
No. Because he's going to leave that straight undefended. And he's going to get lucky. Well, I don't want to spoil all that, but like, it gets bad.
It gets bad, but it seems like it's going to be bad regardless.
That's true.
But who knows? Again, I think that a lot of people, when they find chances like this, they're like, this is my moment. This is my moment to be a fucking Jerry Bruckheimer movie.
Okay, but that brings up, which I want to know your opinion on then, because what you're kind of suggesting is that the ends justify the means a little bit. Whereas for me, that's not how I feel, and I think that's why I'm having a hard time with him.
I'm finding myself to be in the middle of the road here.
Okay.
With both sides of obviously for and against this. It's hard within its history, and it's like, well, this just fucking happened. So It's like, it's hard. But again, when it comes to, like I said, that damn near sounds like some mutiny shit.
Yeah.
Just straight up not following orders. And then for somebody to write a thesis from is it the Naval Academy?
It wasn't the Naval Academy. Let's see where that one was
something
from.
To that effect.
Yeah, it was
somebody being like, well, it's just poor communication. It's like, well, dude, that's not an excuse for someone being a dipshit.
So this guy he was getting a master's of military art and science from the military history.
Damn.
And he was getting it from the Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, Marquette.
So yeah, Fort Leavenworth.
And I don't know if I like that, the poor communication thing.
Yeah, and it's like it's well written and it's super well researched, and he like thanks a ton of like really, I assume, important people that helped him do it. But I was reading through it's like 130 pages and it's well done. But I just don't know if I agree with that being enough to, I don't know, absolve this guy of everything. He's the commander.
Yeah, I'm reading stuff right here talking about intelligence officers talking to Halsey, saying that they straight up listened to Japanese people playing poker and going through the San Bernardino Strait and all that. So
Dang.
that's not great.
That's not great.
Yeah, I don't like. I really actually genuinely I get straight up pissed off when I read stories about you have all these men who are there to give you intelligence reports, and you're like, fuck them.
Right.
Like, dude, what? That's the entire point of these people, to give you information. You're like,
That's their
I
whole
don't
job.
care about the information. It's like, what?
I have
war?
an ego.
Yeah. So that's upsetting.
And I was trying to think about it, like, I think maybe it's like partly projection on me because so like when I play, do you know like tempo strategies in games and like chess and stuff? So like the idea of tempoing is I'm going to jockey for like either a piece advantage, like I'm going to be up one piece, or a position advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So like in something like chess, I get to the middle first. And then I'm going to trade piece for piece of equal value as much as I can because it's a game that I can more or less control, right? Like neither of us lose, neither of us win, so it's okay for you to trade. But because I have that small little advantage at the end of the board, I'll have one more piece or one better position than you. And in games, it's a really solid strategy. Like I really like the philosophy behind it. It like makes sense to me. I feel like I'm always doing things. And I feel like this guy's an asshole because I feel like this is what he's doing. Like he's like, I know that we have numbers. So even if I'm trading pieces, who gives a shit? Because at the end of the board, it'll just be me with more boats than them. So he's like willing to take more pieces off that he doesn't necessarily have to if he played a more defensive, like controlling strategy.
I imagine.
Don't let me ever be in charge of anything because I think I would tempo through everything. Like, yeah, we'll just trade everything.
So I'm going to caveat
Okay.
on that. Speaking of tempo, these men that we're talking about for the Battle of Leyte Gulf have been out at sea and deployed and doing shit for like the last 10 months.
Right. Long time.
To the point where they've had to have ships come out and give them some new provisions. They sound tired.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that being out at sea for high stakes war for 10 months, that when decisions come up like that, I'm gonna be like, dude, let's just get this shit over with.
Right. Dang.
That is like where I would think that making some brash decisions like that would come up, is being like, I just want to go home.
And it's like you said last time when we were talking about clout switch, like initiative is still a thing. Like, you know, because they were saying, let's just do it. We have initiative. Like, we can get to them.
Yeah, I find myself on hardcore both sides here.
Yeah, seriously.
I really do. I could really find myself, if this was like a sixth grade speech and debate class, I wouldn't mind taking either side.
I think I want to have my next class do this debate so I can like figure it out. Like, okay, I'm trying to sort this out.
You guys do the legwork for me, all right? Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, as listeners can tell, this is such a deeply complex 4 days, 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, what is it? So
the 23rd to the 26th.
Yeah.
So 4 days.
But also the 20th.
Oh, dude, I mean, shit's been going on all October.
June was like really important.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, but I think that we've done a pretty good job kind of rounding up the cattle.
I like focusing on these human moments of like where they right or wrong in this decision and like it's not clear.
Hey man, we're just umpires behind the plate calling balls and strikes, and
Seriously.
Sometimes we get a strike as a ball and a ball as a strike. Our strike zone may be a little bit different than other folks.
True.
So, but is this where we end our Battle of Sibuyan Sea?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Then we're going to start talking about people getting through the straits and all that.
So next time is going to be battle off of Samar in the Siriago Strait.
Yeah.
Things are going to get even more.
Ugh.
We haven't even begun.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the hairy
We
stuff yet.
haven't even begun.
Although that, like, in my head, it's like an anime when the Musashi explodes up as like that pillar or whatever with all the bodies. Like it's just like frozen there in my mind. Like the water never came back down.
I feel it.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, I feel it. I have a question. Is the Musashi the same size as the Yamato? Is it the exact same ship, but they just named them two different things? Or am I tripping off that?
damn it. My stupid author went through which ones were Yamato class size. He went through all, and
I think there's two
I definitely like
that were identical.
clicked through that one really quick.
Email us
Yeah,
at
exactly.
battlebuddiespod@gmail.com. Hey, folks, thank you for listening. Again.
Seriously.
It's been fun. Our listening rate has only gone up.
Yeah, thanks for telling people.
Yeah, absolutely. We are on the social medias on Twitter at BattleBuddies4. We're on Instagram,
I will post
I think.
one day. I have to edit, you guys. I have to edit.
No, dude, you're
this
good.
stuff. But I have to.
But some of the stuff we've been talking about, I got some pictures of the Musashi being blown
Yeah.
apart.
I'll give you the password too. You can.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I got some pictures of McCampbell with all of those Japanese flags and stuff. So stuff like that, if you're interested in. Maps.
Let's find a picture of Fukuomi. That dude's legit.
Fukuomi.
Fukuomi.
Fuck you. You owe me.
Yeah, right. That's what he should have said to all those pilots. Like, you guys all owe me right here.
Yeah.
Because if you know anything about the Kaigun's like military strategies, it wasn't good to disobey and to like resist.
No.
You don't get to move up after that.
No.
Like he clearly killed his career for the sake of the lives of his men.
Honor, bro.
Yeah. It's
Honor.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking love that guy.
So, folks, if you have any idea, if you want to hear any specific battles in the future and have any ideas for us, or if you have any experience with battles in recent history, feel free to email us and we can try to get you on the show. BattleBuddiesPod@gmail.com. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. The Reddit sphere is definitely a huge community for us. Other than that, next week we will have our current conflicts, and then after that we will be in the battle off of Samar. So thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you, and bonsai.